All right, if we're going to make a typography poster, it's about time to learn how to bring in our text. So what I want you to do is copy that quote you have wherever you have it or get ready to type it out. Hit the letter T to get your type tool, and I already have my quote copied to my clipboard, so I'm just going to click once, hit Command V to paste that in there, and you'll see it drops it in a straight line. Now if this was a long text, let's say a whole paragraph, because I just clicked once, it would just put it in one long line. Now with my type tool selected, I could also click and drag, which will create a text box that will contain my text. Now if I hit Command V to paste, you'll see it contains it within that box. So now that we know how to bring in the text, let's learn how to modify it. So what I want you to do is go ahead and Command click, and with that text selected, my options bar will change to reflect the options that my type tool has. Even if, let's say I click on the move tool or the selection tool, if I click away, and now truly it is my selection tool and my options bar changes, but by clicking on that line of text, my options change to what the text tool has. So I can click on this drop down menu at the top, and I can see all kinds of fonts from my entire font library. These are all the fonts that are on my system currently that I have available. And if you find one you like, you can see the preview here on the side. You can just click on it and it'll change your font to be whatever that is. Now once you get a font you like, you can come in here to the character window, click on that, and I can further refine options like the size of the font. I can bring that up a little bit. The leading, and what the leading is, it's the space between the lines. This isn't going to be a good sample on this one because it's not in 2 lines, but this one, however, if I click once on that, come back over to my character window, and I change that leading, if I bring it down, it gets smaller. The reason why they called it leading is back in the day when they used to set type by hand, they would put physical pieces of lead between the types of between the rows of text. So that's what that is. It's not leading, it's leading. And then we have our kerning, the space between 2 characters and how that behaves. And then we also have our tracking, which is when you track out every character. So for example, as I bring this up, let's just jump to a bigger number, you can see that it spaces out those letters. So we can come in here and we can refine things. And if you decide that you don't want to have to try and figure out the distances you're wanting to do here, you can use the touch type tool. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to click once, use that shortcut space command, and then click to bring it in a little bit closer. I'm going to click once on my text again, come back up here and choose the touch type tool. And now I can click once on any letter I want to mess with, and then I can drag it to modify the space. Or I can even scale it up. I can hover on this tab on the top and rotate it. So there's a lot of things I can do. The benefit of working this way is it keeps my text editable. So now if I wanted to, I could just command click off to the side, get my text tool selected here with the letter T, and highlight that S, and I could change it to anything I wanted, whether it was a lowercase letter or back to that capital, or maybe a different letter altogether. It's nice to keep that editable. So that's one way to work. And let's say you're playing with this and you just don't see the right font you want to use. So what we can do is with the Adobe Creative Suite subscription, you have access to the Adobe fonts from Typekit. So with my font selected here, I can jump over to the add fonts from Typekit, or actually you don't even have to be in there. Let's say you're just in your project. We can come up here to type, add fonts from Typekit. That's another way to get there. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up the Typekit library. And once you're in there, you can refine your selections further. So let's go ahead and pick a sans serif font. And maybe I will choose, now here's one thing too, I want to keep the ones that I can sync. If it's just the web-based version, that's if you want to embed it on a website, but not all web fonts are available for your desktop. So since I'm showing you on my desktop how to design with typography, we're going to leave the sync option selected, so it just shows us the fonts I can actually sync up with. Let's find some headings fonts. These are fonts that might be a little more stylistic and not as good for a paragraph. In this case, it'll work out great for our quote. I want the weight to be a little bit heavier, and maybe choose a more condensed font. So now with these font options selected, I can kind of scroll through and see if any of these stick out that I want to use on the project. So how about this one, Abolition Soft. So I'll go ahead and use this font. I'll click on that. And it gives me the option to select different font families. So the characters here, we've got regular and oblique families we can choose from. I'll leave those both selected. Oblique is another word for italic. So I'll click on Sync Selected Fonts, and what it's going to do is immediately sync this to my Creative Cloud library. I can just X out of that now, and jump back over into Illustrator, and you'll see I get my notification up here. 2 fonts were added, and I can immediately apply that. So I don't have to quit Illustrator and open it back up. I can click once up on here to apply to this font, search for it, Abolition Soft. I'll click once on that, and now that font has been applied. So you can see it's a lot quicker than it used to be. If you have any experience in the past with some of the older versions of Illustrator, which you probably don't, or you wouldn't be in this class, but if you did, you used to have to close out of your app and then reopen it to load, but not anymore. So that's a great way to add new fonts to your system. So now that we've done that, now we can fine tune our fonts a little bit further. So we can click on here and click on the drop down of this character menu to make changes here. We can click on the paragraph setting if we don't want it to hyphenate, or if we want to modify, the layout of your font, whether it's left justified, center, right. Okay, so we can play with those options as well. The other thing that I like to do is I use shortcuts a lot. So instead of even coming up to those menus, what I can do is hit Command, Shift, and the period key, or the greater than, and you can see that I can make my font much bigger or smaller without even having to take my hands over to the mouse to find it in the menu. So that's Command Shift, comma, to make it smaller, or Command Shift period to make it bigger. Now as I make it bigger, you'll notice that leading gets stacked on top of itself. So now I'll hit Command, Option, and the down arrow key to make my leading bigger, or Command, Option, and the up arrow key to bring it back in. So this is the way I work a lot of times when I'm trying to quickly blitz through my font and get it kind of close to the size I want. And once I get this set where I want, see, we're in this text box now, so the problem is as I make this bigger, it's going to start jumping to the lines it needs. But let's say I got this exactly how I wanted it in 2 lines. I could just click once on this, and if I start to click and drag, what's going to happen is it's just going to resize my box, but I want it to stay the same size, just bigger. I'm sorry, the same layout here in 2 lines, but just bigger. So what I'm going to do instead is hit the letter E, which if I hover right over here, that's my free transform tool. So now what I can do is click and drag, and it's going to make the whole thing bigger, the box and the fonts. Again, you'll see it skews it, so hold on the Shift key to make sure it doesn't skew it. I'll let go of the mouse first, and then I'll let go of the Shift key. And you can see my font is much bigger. So, all right, we're getting there. We're almost there. You're learning how to use the different tools here regarding type. What I want you to do now, if you're up for it, we're going to go up here to Type, Create Outlines. So Shift Command O. Now, before we do this, what I want to do is probably make a copy. So I've got my selection tool selected. I could have my type tool selected and just hit the Command key. Either way, make sure that that arrow, you're showing that black arrow, and then hit the Alt key and you get the double arrow. I don't know if you can see that there. We got the black arrow and the white arrow next to it. Click and drag to the side. What that's going to do is make a copy, so we still have this editable text if we want to come back to this and make changes. But clicking on this copy we've got here on the main artboard, come to Type and click on Create Outlines, or you could just hit Shift Command O. Now what it does is it converts your type to shapes. It's no longer a font. And if we zoom in here, you see all these little blue dots. What are those things? Well, those are anchor points and paths. So if I hit the letter A and I get my direct selection tool, I can select just a few of these paths. And you notice the ones that are selected have solid blue. The ones that aren't selected have white in the middle there, okay? And I can click and drag. So now this gets really fun. Now I can really modify things and start making it exactly what I want it to do. So maybe I want my L, or maybe the R over here. I can click and drag this down a little bit, and start making this my own and doing some really, really cool things to it. Maybe I want to highlight this T, drag it up, and maybe put a sail on there like a pirate ship or something. But you can see how all of a sudden it goes from being a font that you really can't do too much with to being custom shapes that you can do anything you can imagine with. We can even use the direct selection tool to select either any one of these individually and add color to it and separate out the colors. So it becomes a lot of fun when you can really go crazy with those outlines. All right, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I'll just hit Command S to save. This isn't what I want to do for my for the look of things yet, but in the next lesson we're going to dive into shapes, colors, graphics, and artboards to create some of those images I showed you with that introduction. All right, here we go.